This is actually worth talking about for a second here. The idea of who should be the one to close back-end sales. So there's a lot of mixed opinions on this in the space. There's people that believe that client success managers are um, that they should basically have the skill sets of a full-blown full stack sales rep and also a full-blown coach. And that was speaking of another past experience with a large eight-figure client. That was the real challenge with that dude in particular is that the CS team was expected to do everything that the sales team was doing and also generate case studies, testimonials, referrals, engagement, and all that kind of stuff. And so that left a very interesting opportunity to be able to, of course, solve that problem for him, but um, just have a more accurate understanding of what actually drives back in sales and also who should be doing it. My personal opinion on this is that, um, and Zach can attest to this and many other people in the program, if you set up your client journey properly, if you have your client success system moving people down the client journey properly, a large plurality, I'm not going to say the majority, but like a plurality being 20 to 40% are going to just come to you when it's time for the next sale. And what you can do to nudge this along is just simply, very simply, just remind them of what like where they're at in the process. Like, hey, you got 60 days left, you got 30 days left. And they're going to say, hey, I know my time's coming up here. I want to keep on working with you. What does that look like? That's typically how that conversation goes. They're already asking to continue to work with you. And so I love that dynamic more than anything else. That I would put that in S tier category. That should be 20 to 40% if things are set up properly. Um, the other, I'd say, A tier after that is you set the sale, rather you set the appointment for the sale at the end of the case study interview. And ideally, this happens from the founder themselves, or you just close them right then and there. And you guys have all heard me talk about this. There's a clear reason why, if you're filming CS interviews, they just spent an entire hour talking about all the value that you've provided for them, how amazing the program is, and it gets them into this state where the buying temperature is increased. And of course, if you structure the interview correctly, the end of it should be a future projection of like, what does the next, 60, 90, 120 days look like for you? You get that information, which again, you utilize to be able to close them on whatever the next step is. And of course, that's pending whatever the next step is for them is in alignment with what you can actually offer. If you don't want to close people into a new offer on the back end that you're not actually the best person to fulfill on, which brings us to the next point, which I think is severely underutilized, is if someone is at the end of your program, they're going to join another program regardless. It's either going to be yours or it's going to be somebody else's. And if they're going to join somebody else's, you might as well get a commission for whatever that program's going to be because you did all of the work to get them ready for that next sale. And so, like, they're going to buy something regardless. You might as well profit from it, right? And so, there's a really interesting opportunity there where if we notice a pattern that our clients are um, they're running into problems that we don't solve, and those problems come from success from the problem that we did solve in the front end, and we can see that we can talk to them, right? You guys always know when in doubt, talk to your highest value clients. We ask them what they're thinking, have a really transparent frame about it, like, hey, like no pressure here, I just want to know, like, are you looking at other programs? Who are you interested in? All this kind of stuff. You get some signal on who to start talking to, who to network with. If you find this person is in alignment with your brand and they actually do good work, start the conversation and see if you can set up some type of strategic partnership where your program becomes a funnel for the next sale, which goes into theirs and you profit off of it. This is assuming that you don't want to solve that problem. This is a very key thing here, right? Like this is only in the situation where you do not want to deliver whatever the next thing is. And you don't have to do that, by the way. I think, again, that's something that Take John here, right? Like the whole thing is affiliate marketing. That's all that is. That's literally all that is. You just find affiliates for whatever the next thing is. Um, there's nothing wrong with that at all. Like, let's say you just want to focus and specialize on your flagship core offer and you really just want to scale that, but you know that you can squeeze more juice out of the LTV. That's a really, really fantastic way to do that. Um, so yeah, and then so to tie us back to where we're going, kind of like the spontaneous tier list that we got here. So S tier is they come to you. It's like an inbound back-end close. And again, the way that you nudge that is by reminding them at the checkpoints that are coming up as far as the duration goes. And then A tier would be after the case study interview. And then I'd say B tier would be a dedicated back-end closer. And that's assuming that you have the lead flow to justify that, by the way, or it's a guy who he does close on the front end, or they, whatever, this person closes on the front end, but they also are really invested in the client success. And, I've seen this a lot with other, larger companies that I've also consulted for. There's always some dude on, yeah, well, I'll get that in just a second, Dylan. There's always some dude on the sales team that actually cares. Like and I knew this because every single time I would work with these people, he would reach out to me on his own. That's the thing. And like, then I would get on a call with the guy and he'd say, hey, like, I really love that, they decided to work with you. We're having issues on the sales side due to these reasons. I know it's a client success issue. Our conviction's going down. We need more leverage, from the back end for the front end here. Please let me know how I can help. Right. And, um, that type of avatar of a closer is a great person to have take back end sales calls. And another leading indicator for that as well, by the way, is a lot of times, and Dylan, actually, I know that you used to do this as well because you used to close for John Whitney, right? The Bulletproof Mindset guy. Um, and I hope I remember this correctly, but a lot of times the closers, they maintain the relationship with the clients that they sold in the program. So they would just reach out to them on their own at like the 30, 60, 90-day marks, not to get a sale, not to do anything other than that they were genuinely curious and making sure that they were having a good experience. Um, if you're running into someone on the sales side that is doing something like that, and again, I know most of the people on the call right now are not at that scale, but it's something to look forward to. If you start seeing stuff like that, that's a great person to take the back end sales calls. And their flow is going to look very similar to what I just described there. They close them into the program. The closing call is aligned with a really good onboarding and client experience. They then reach out to the client on their own and one-on-one at the 30, 60, 90-day mark and asking if they need any help, how the experience is going, and they're collecting feedback. By the way, oftentimes, and I've seen this pattern come up a lot as well in these eight-figure teams, if the CS team is not doing their job, the clients tend to shut down and they stop communicating essentially. And so the feedback loop gets broken. But if the closer who closed them was really good and kind of fits this description that I'm talking about, the clients would go to the closer because they're the person that they trust the most. And the closer becomes the advocate for the success of that client. And when that happens, that's when you get sales teams and client success teams clashing because the sales guys are like, what the fuck, dude? I just closed this guy into the program. You're not doing your job. Why are they coming to me for help for stuff that you're getting paid for? Right? It's a very reasonable thing. And also, too, with teams at this size as well, right? Sometimes the closers lose their commission if the refund happens, which I think is not fair, by the way. If the CS team dropped the ball, it is fair if they close the wrong person into the program, and you can have a very obvious QA process to check that. But if someone's like 3 months into the program, they're doing everything they're supposed to do on the sales side, and they get their money stolen from them because the CS team didn't deliver, that's bad. So anyways, another side note, I'm not going on a tangent here, but the workflow of that closer, again, is going to be very similar to what they would do naturally. They're going to check in, they're going to see how they can help. They, have a symbiotic relationship with the client success team at this point. Ideally, actually, they do show up. One of these guys does show up to the CS team meetings weekly, so they're maintaining that level of connection and communication. And then when it comes time to close for the next program, he's a sales professional, knows exactly what needs to happen. You just have a natural conversation to set the deal, and then it simply just happens, right? And the reason why, like back end of that, I describe it like that, this is really important. A back end sales call is just a sales call. I think when you get into your head about what that whole process should look like, it really destroys the momentum. And I understand it completely, right? Because like sometimes it can be uncomfortable to sell things to people that have already paid you thousands of dollars. I get that. I also understand that if you've built a relationship with this person and you're the coach, and the dynamic shifted to where you're the one who's providing the value and now you're asking for more from them. You're asking for value in the form of money. It can feel like an abrupt kind of frame switch there, which can be difficult to navigate. But I think that comes down to a mindset thing and a framing thing. Um, so there's that. So before I finish, I go off. There's another thing I want to mention to that, but the tier list, I would say that's B tier. C tier is having CSMs do it. They're typically not very good at sales. And when they do, and this is actually really important, and this is something worth writing down, and this is a warning, right? So um, there is a particular person in the info space who is known for turning client success teams into sales teams, essentially. And so they teach basically to mine your client list to depletion. And I came into a client, actually the same one I was talking about, where there was, things out of whack. Um, eight-figure client, and they were running live webinars to clients that had already paid $26,000 to join the program. And the framing was, hey, we sold you the wrong thing. Actually, you need to pay us even more money. And that's to the tune of $83,000. And when I was doing the audit for this company, I was speaking to the clients, and you could imagine what they were saying about that, right? It was a very weird dynamic. Um, and so not only was that the case, what was also the case was the CSMs were just hounding these people for more sales. Um, they weren't actually managing the success of the clients, right? And so a bit of a like a reason why this happened for whatever it's worth. This dude didn't come from the info space, and you know how like in the software sales world, we got like SDRs and BD, like sales development reps and business development reps, which is code for like closer and setter, right? The positions are wrapped in this language where it's a sales position that's disguised as something that it's not, or some people straight up call sales reps consultants, right? Um, he literally perceived client success manager to be equivalent to like business development rep, essentially. So that's why that happened. But from the client experience perspective, these coaches, these CSMs were like, look, I feel a lot of pressure. I'm trying to deliver results, but I also need to hit these quotas for back in sales, or I'm not going to get paid the full amount that I'm being promised here. And there's all this, you can already, it's like very complicated, very messy, big reason why I make sure that I don't do those deals anymore unless it's 100% aligned. Um, avoid that at all costs. It does not work. That dude's reputation got destroyed because of that. So would not recommend. So to recap, S tier is them coming to you. A tier, case study, back and sale. I'd say B tier is a dedicated closer who fit the description that I mentioned there. And then C tier would be a CSM that does it. One last thing I forgot to mention there, which was implied in what I just said. But when you set it up like that with the CSMs, um, the relationship with the client changes. That's the real issue. The client is no longer someone I need to help. The client is someone I need to extract value from. And that is the problem. And so what ends up happening is over time, The CSMs, kind of like how like closers will lose conviction if they don't believe in the product they're selling. The CSMs will lose conviction in delivering the goods, the sauce, to the clients if they feel like what they're doing is just a means to an end to get more money. Um, and by the way, I'll get to the chat. I see there's a lot of good stuff happening there, so I'll get to that in a second. One thing I wanted to mention, so yeah, that's that. One thing I wanted to mention when I talked about the framing of the back end sale. Remember, I said back end sales are just sales calls. Don't get tripped up about it. It's dependent on the client experience and the framing of that call. One thing that works really, really, really well. I'm putting this at straight S tier. Like this is really, really good, but it's difficult to execute. So if you do execute this properly, like it'll fucking print, but it's tough. What you do is you tell them, and you can say it explicitly. And when I say tell, it's about the framing. But at the end of the onboarding call, you straight up tell them that you're going to sell them into another program at the end. And the way that it's framed is like you level up, right? And so what ends up happening is the back end sale is now a goal to reach as opposed to something that you're taking from them, right? So it's something that they unlock, it's something that they accomplish, which then gets them to get access to this next thing. And the way that you subtly drive that sale and continue planting the seeds for that, and again, don't close anyone that's not a good fit for it. But the way that you do that is, and you guys will see us do this now with this mastermind, right? This is going to turn into like, this is the base, everyone's here. The people that will be coming in the future are paying like pay to get access to this, right? And so these are going to get locked out. Like no one's going to get access to these calls. I'm not going to share any, like none of that stuff. I already don't share the recordings for people that don't show up because I want to incentivize, people to show up. Unless they ask for it, then they get it, right? But you'll see this is going to get locked into an ivory tower. But what's going to happen is over time, what you do is you kind of drip feed the value of what's happening in like the Cool Kids Club, which is the mastermind, right? And it's like you got the base program, and then it's like, oh, big shout out to Jessica. She just hit her first, 170K month. We talked about it. And I share a clip, right? Like of a coaching moment from this call where it's like Jessica had this problem. We solved it with this. They see, everyone else on the call starts getting involved, just helping solve the problem. And then we just drop that into the main channel, right? You don't need to say anything crazy. You don't need to push it. Just plant the seed, right? And just watch it grow. You do that very consistently, but not too much, right? It's kind of like a low dose thing, but you want to do it consistently. Let's say, once every 2 to 4 weeks, I think is fair. And then people are like, what's going on over there? Right? Like I want to be a part of that. Right. And so we already told them how they were going to get a part, be a part of it by leveling up and earning the right to be in the mastermind. But also we're planting the seeds of how fucking sick it is to be in the mastermind. Now, of course, this is especially true for business offers, right? Um, they're not going to buy the thing if they don't have the money to pay for it. So if we're helping people make more money, the front end program, and you guys have heard me talk about this before, but this is worth reinforcing heavily. You guys know how to create client journeys for the most part, right? Everyone here knows how to create client journeys. The first step in creating the client journey is doing what? It's defining the outcome. It is defining what success looks like. And as everyone also knows as well, that can be very tricky for a lot of people. For like 90% of the clients that come into the program, if I ask them either on the sales call or the onboarding or the audit call or whatever, how do you know when someone has succeeded in your program? 90% of people can't answer that correctly. It's not measurable, it's not quantifiable. There also isn't really much of a qualitative measure there as well. It's just kind of like this very fluffy, amorphous thing. Or sometimes they'll just straight up say, well, they get to the end of the program. And I'm like, right, what's at the end of the program? Like, how do they know other than like things expiring, right? And another way that I frame this too, for what it's worth, I'll ask like if I'm really not getting it out of someone, and I say this as like a meta example right now, by the way, to leverage for your own coaching calls. If someone is not able to answer this, I'll be like, okay, so I give you $10,000. You give me what? And then if they're like, oh, you get a course and a community and calls, I'm like, okay, what does the course give me? Oh, well, you learn how to do, okay, well, what does learning how to do X do for me? Oh, well, it'll help you. You see how we're starting to get to it, right? And like you start to pull out like what the real outcome is. So that's step one of being able to get some type of target for what success actually looks like as it relates to back end sales and what I just mentioned, the thought before. If you don't know, you can simply decide that success at the end of the front end program is whatever would qualify them for the back end program. Super straightforward. Like you just ask I'll use the coaching context just because it's easy for all of us to understand. We can get into other examples later, but like let's say, for example, you're helping someone make 50K per month. You want to upsell a mastermind or an in-person event or whatever it is. Um, how much money do they need to make to be able to buy that thing? And it has to be in relation to the size of their business, right? Like if they're making 30K per month and your offer is $30,000, that's not what I'm talking. There's profit more like you get paid in cash, right? So it's like how much cash does this person need to be making in order to work with you? That's the target that we set for the true outcome of the front end program. And then we work backwards from there to engineer an experience that makes that happen, right? In a coaching context, it would be weight lost. At least it's like the base measurement, right? We also talk about habits and sleep and beliefs and identity as well. But, you know, let's say the program was I'll help you lose 30 pounds in 6 months or 12 months, whatever is a healthy, range for that. And then, but their actual goal is like 100 or something like that. Well, how much weight do they need to lose in order to, qualify for the next thing, which is a larger challenge, which is losing more weight? Well, they probably need to lose 10, 20, 30 pounds first before they decide to lose another, 10 times that, right? Um, so that's the way to think about that. If you want a done for you client success system that lets you keep scaling your front end without breaking your business and generate results, referrals, and back end sales on autopilot, then click the link down below and let's make it happen.